recollection on the crisp side at all. If you don't, you don't. So
Yeah,
that's
sure.
fine.
See, that would be Freddie more than me, but of course I can chime in.
Absolutely. Jump in. Seriously.
Yeah, I will.
Jump in. Any of you have any comments at all, jump in at any time.
Okay.
What if you don't want to associate with somebody you might know?
Exactly. Are we rolling?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. We had. I found some old stuff on. It was basically about Charlie Crisp and Laura Burns Crisp and their son Harry Crisp and the other son Jim Crisp and the daughter Helen. And it showed some pictures of their general stores up in Parrish. And there was Aiken.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any recollection of any of that?
No, we didn't know them at that time, and that was about the time Violette and Harry got married. They were up there, still had the store, and after Violette and Harry were married, shortly after that, they moved down to Marion, and then started a general merchandise store right across from the hitch yard, where farmers came in, brought their horses, wagons.
Really? Where was
Right
that?
off the square.
Right off the square.
Yeah, there was a, I don't know what's down there now. I think it's a lumber yard or Norman lumber yard or paint or something. Buildings, and then completely remodeled, torn down, and moved. But they had this general merchandise store, a large one. I remember Mrs. Crisp, she did a lot of clerking there in the store.
That was Laura.
Yeah, Laura. And women would come in from the farm. They would have chickens, and your mom would trade with the chickens, give them credit, and then they'd want material, and she'd have material for dresses and whatever by the big roll. And I could see Mrs. Crisp now. She rolled out on the counter, X number of feet. And
Yards.
measured all
Yeah.
And so they just did a real good business.
Every time I talk to people about the business, they keep referring back to her.
Yeah, she was the one that really ran it. He was there, sort of figurehead or whatever. He never was too active, other than he kind of kept his eye on what was going on. But he didn't do much of the selling.
That's interesting.
And she did. She did the selling and the buying. She was, I might say, the brains of that. That he participated in the big picture, but he didn't work like she did in the store.
How was her personality? Because I heard some recordings of her, and she seemed like I don't want to use the word hyper, but very like a spitfire. She was always into everything, everybody at the party.
Yeah, she was a very, she was an awful lot like, I think Harry was pretty much like his mother, very blunt and outspoken. You never had to try to second guess what's on their mind. It was they usually let you know. And but she did all the buying and managed the store pretty much. And she was really great to the whole operation.
And Helen, do you have any recollection of her at all?
Just that she was such a kind lady, and then going over to their house and seeing that, what do they call it? That canopy on that bed. I mean, that just impressed
you
me.
were at their house.
I was too, but I can't
when
really
they lived down by
remember
Logan,
because
Logan School.
yeah, we would always run in, and see both of them and say a few words, because of your dad. And but I thought she was just charming. But you could always tell she was the chief.
Mhm.
She knew what she would do.
Okay. Did go ahead. Get any other comments on that?
But she bought a car from me at one time. I think Jim drove the car this time, but it belonged to her. And at least she was the one who made the payments. she was always very prompt. She knew exactly. Because I never let her get in the rear on her. Well, we took a lot of it out in freight because she had groceries, and she kept a real good running record on how much she owed me. But it wasn't any real big deal. She paid so much a month. She was always very comfortable with it.
So she bought a car for Jim Chris?
Yeah, as a Preceded Studebaker. It was one that I had gotten from the factory that one of the directors or manager of the Studebaker company had used, and then the new model came out, so I got a good buy. Well, in fact, we bought about a half a dozen at that time. She bought one. Jim drove the first. Maybe she bought it for him. She made the payments.
What about Jim Chris? Obviously, nothing was
He had a most wonderful personality. When guy, he absolutely was the best looking guy I think I had ever seen. He could have been in the movies. He was tall, dressed immaculate all the time, and he was really an upper class type guy. He was very, very, very nice, very well educated, read, and this sort of thing. Made a good impression where he went.
What do you think happened to him? Why did he end up the way he did?
Well, I never really knew, and I never did ever discuss it with Harry. But Jim did a lot of advertising by mail, and I had either read or been told that some of his advertising that people sent money to him for, he sent them whatever the product was in the order, wasn't exactly what they had been led to believe. As an example, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they said that he had ran ads in several of these papers and magazines in the rural area, people living on farms and things like that. And he had run a special on so much silk to make a quilt. And and it was very reasonable. And whenever he filled the order, he sent silk thread.
Oh.
And instead of so I don't know. They said, they
Well, that puts a quilt together.
that they
The thread.
got some charge against him
Mail
using
fraud.
the mail fraud.
Yep.
And
That's what happened.
Is that right? I didn't.
And but he was quite a schemer. He could come up with all kinds of ideas.
Who was this girl? He basically ended up committing suicide in front of her apartment, and he put her name on the window of his car.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
wound
pretty
up.
bad.
She wound up. I don't know what the hell. I didn't know.
Why would he ever do this thing like that? I wonder.
She would marry him for some
She was
reason.
very attractive. Very attractive. I remember having real nice breasts. That's about all I remember.
Oh yeah, wouldn't you know? Always looking at the top
Everything's
half.
easy except for that.
Can you edit some of
We
this?
can cut all that out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but he would notice that.
She later married a guy there in Marion, and I guess lived happy ever after. In fact, I think Jim was, when he passed away, I think it was in the Studebaker
Wow.
Yeah, that must have been awfully sad for her.
Was
Oh.
and Harry Chris at the time he was mayor of
Yeah.
Marion.
Oh wow.
And the chief of police called him and said,
Oh.
Yeah,
"Find your brother."
What a.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and he left a note to Harry, even Violette never found out what was in the news. He never compromised it. Apparently Jim asked him not to. And I don't think anyone
Confidential thing.
Amazing.
what was the but the police said that it wasn't too hairy. But he never discussed it.
How did you said that you mentioned about the chickens and the eggs and all that with the general store in Marion?
Yep.
How did Harry Crisp end up going from his father and his mother having that general store and selling chickens and eggs there, and him doing just the chickens and eggs? Harry Crisp.
Well, of course, he got into it in big business with big incubators.
Incubators.
Oh, yeah. Where he hatched chickens. The incubators were about, each one was about the size of this deck, right about where my hooks go. Huge, big, beautiful thing, mahogany wood. And they had these shells and their heat control. And he was selling for the Sears Roebuck. The people who ordered chickens from Sears, because they always featured chickens in the catalog. And Harry filled it with. So that was his, I think, his best outlet was through Sears.
They have the year about 1926 when he got that. Does that sound accurate to you?
Let's see. Yeah, that would be probably about right. Yeah, it would be. It's probably in the late 20s. I don't know. See, he was doing that when he and Violette got married. I don't remember what year that was. Sometime in the late 20s.
Did you work there?
I worked, in fact, Harry was paying me 10 cents a month. Yeah.
God, he's
And I
real
said,
liberal, wasn't he?
my brother-in-law, I should, but he said, no, you work right with these other guys, that's why I'm paying them the 10 cents an hour. I'm telling you, we'd put in a full damn day, and that a day was 12 hours back then. And so you made $1.20. Yeah. And I always told Marion, because part of the
Things
time
are
was
tough.
cleaning the chicken coops.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, yes, and,
Dealing in a bunch
yeah,
of it.
chicken shit. And I'm getting 10 cents an hour for it. But I'll just let him give it back then. He and Violette were living upstairs. And, of course, the ceiling to that building was, you could just reach up and touch the top of it. And it was so hot. Summertime with no air conditioning. And Violette and Harry, many a night, would sit out front in their car till maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to wait till it got cool enough they could go up and go to bed, because it was just like an attic. And they had fans on there, but it just took a long time to cool it off. In fact, they were living there when Carol was born.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did you work there?
Oh, I think I did just one summer.
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 Do you ever remember a guy by the name of Curtis Crisp? He worked, going back, he apparently is a cousin to Harry Crisp.
I just heard the name, and I knew he was a cousin or a relative. I don't think I knew that.
Okay. And the other person was John F. Crisp, would have been the grandfather or the father of Charlie Crisp.
Mhm.
Remember anything here
No,
over hearing
I
his name?
just know that his name was John, and he had already passed away. I didn't know anything about it.
Okay. Uh, do you ever remember the name of a guy called Linder Ferrell? Ever heard of him before?
No.
His name popped up, but I didn't know where it was. Linder. And it's around 1870s.
Oh, that was Leander.
Leander Farrell.
Yeah, Leander Farrell.
That was
Hell,
pretty
they
closely.
Yeah, I messed that up.
They had 16 kids. Yeah.
16
They
kids?
had 16 kids. And they at one time they were
He was
all
busy.
living home. And Mom said she went over there and she said they didn't even have a front door on their house. Uncle Leander had taken the front door off because there's so damn much going in and out. Somebody going in and out, he took the damn door off.
That's a good
And,
way to do it.
Mom said it was winter time. They had a big fireplace going, and she said they didn't have a front door. She didn't know what happened to the door. Maybe they didn't ever had one because they never were too prosperous. But there were 16 of them.
So that was your uncle.
He would have been my great uncle,
Great uncle.
my mother's uncle.
Your mother's uncle. What did you remember what he did for a living?
He was a farmer.
Farmer.
Yeah.
Okay. That name popped up, which I thought was interesting.
Leander.
Leander. Don't have that name on it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything at all about Laura Burns, where she was from, or anything about her? I've got a lot on her.
No, I don't. Never recall hearing anything per se.
Said her
Anything about it.
her dad was in the railroad, associated with the railroad business somehow. Let's see. I've got a picture here from the Marion Hatchery and Produce Company. You've seen that one before.
Oh, isn't that something?
And that's looks like Harry Crisp right there in the center.
Yeah, it is.
And you see good enough
Yeah,
to run and get your glasses?
Yeah, but I can tell the way he's standing. Yeah, I look at the glasses. I'll look at it.
Oh, sure.
I'll be done. That's pretty good pictures.
But we took all these old truck. I'm not sure, are they loading or unloading? Can you tell it when they put
No,
on the
he
train?
had 2 or 3 of those on the trucks. And then
Can
go
you
out
see it
and
good enough,
visit
Rob?
these
Yeah.
farmers and buy chickens and deliver baby chickens and so on.
How did you get these pictures?
We found them upstairs at Chris Baker's, or
Oh, wow.
an enormous amount of them. But didn't know if you had recollection any of that.
I remember that back into the hatchery.
That's what that was, the back end of the
Yeah,
hatchery.
back in.
And they were either loading or unloading, you
Yeah.
think, or something?
Chickens, yeah. He sold chickens also to the stores there.
Marion?
Yeah. And he'd sell even to individuals. I remember going to be young about it. She said she'd boil it for 3 days.
Just make sure.
She called Harry up and she told him, she said, I'm sending it back to you. She said, I've been boiling the damn thing for 3 days. She said, we still can't get any of the meat on it.
This, I can't tell what age he is, but it looks like he'd be in his later 20s or 30s, early 30s.
But see, he didn't come down there. He hadn't been in Marion more than a couple of years. But he and Violette got married. And maybe 3 years, so I can't remember that. So he would have been in his late 20s.
Do you remember him coming over to the house or anything?
Oh, hell yes. Yes, I do. Yeah, he had a old Chevrolet that you could hear it coming.
You can hear it coming?
Yeah. Yeah, we did, because the road coming down to our house hadn't been paved at that time. When he and Violet first started dating, later it was paved south of the county. And you could always tell when Harry was coming, you could hear the damn thing a couple of blocks away.
Nobody's exhausted. You have a
I don't know.
those things.
It's just an old damn car. And he had that even when Carol was born. And of course, Carol had this arm. And, she had a nerve injury because it was a very difficult birth. And they had to use instruments to pull her out. And so they injured a nerve in an arm, that in her right arm actually. And this arm, she didn't have any control over it. And I would pick her up, and that arm just go back. She couldn't raise it up.
Okay.
And Violet, of course, was so concerned about it. Well, Harry was too. That Violet said, "Oh, Carol, I guess was maybe 6 months old, or maybe a year." And they had the doctor there in Marion had been having he was massaging the arm, and various things that he thought might, but nothing was having an effect on it. And Violet finally, she said, "We're going to St. Louis." And Harry said, "Well, we never make it in his little car, it was him." So, but Violet was determined that she got the name of some doctor, some specialist in St. Louis. And so Harry said, I had to shut the Studebaker garage at the time. And he said he wanted to borrow a car off him. So I went and had, I guess, noon or demonstrator whatever. I'll never forget it. I filled it up full of gas. He brought it back empty.
He remembered that.
That's when you were the Studebaker dealer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I told him about it. And he said, "Yeah, I knew it was empty." But he said, "I got theirs back," and he never offered to fill it. And I told Violet, I said, "Then from now on, if you borrow a car, you're going to get it empty, to start with." And which he did. But anyway, they took Carol, this doctor in St. Louis, and told the doctor what they'd been doing, massaging the arm and so on. And he said, "Well, that's the wrong thing." He said, "It's a nerve injury, and that shouldn't have been they shouldn't have been done at all." So he secured the arm. He said it's a nerve, and if the arm's put back in this position, he said there's a good possibility that the nerve will heal and the arm will grow.
She's about a year old.
Yeah, I don't think she was quite a year old.
Man.
And sure enough,
Yeah,
the doctor put this arm in this cast, and they put it down to where it couldn't be moved. And he said, "You come back to St. Louis, I don't know, maybe 30 days or whatever, something like that." Could have been a time less. But anyway, and at that point, the arm had never developed, not like the other one had. The arm was just this kind of swivel arm, like it was loose, like a sleeve on a shirt or whatever. And sure enough, when they went back to St. Louis, and he took the cast off the arm, she was right up.
Maybe that's something.
Well, first time she'd ever had any control. So she made Violet and Harry make 2 or 3 visits back. And I guess they had to restrict the movement of the arm. But that was all that was necessary.
Wow.
And there was people who had gone through life with an arm injury from birth. And it would have been a simple thing, It was just a nerve injury. And if they hadn't gone to St. Louis, there's a good chance that Carol would never have used her arm.
I'm trying to get you down there.
I remember the night Carol was born over Carbondale. I stayed in the car all night long outside the hospital. Violet was having one thing at a time. She had, in fact, I think Carol might have been a little premature too. And they decided that they'd better get the baby out. So it was a very difficult thing. But she was fine with that.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
This is a picture about 1910 of Charlie Crisp and Laura Burns Crisp.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how you remember it?
Yeah.
It's a very early picture.
Yeah, yes, yes. Yeah, that's still that looked like. Who is that over there?
I think that's Harry, and I think that's Jim. We're guessing.
I think so. Must be.
Jim Crisp's brother, and then Harry
Yeah.
Crisp.
Was Jim older or
Yeah.
young here?
His older brother.
A couple of years or
We found this letter from 1919 where Harry Crisp is writing a guy by the name of John Crisp. We couldn't figure out who that guy was. Does that ring a bell? Hey,
so. Other than I think it could have been his uncle.
his uncle?
Yeah, I think so. I think Corporal Chris had an uncle. Or had a brother with the name of John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
That's, and yeah, again, it could have been his son. But, maybe he had a son. But they didn't know.
You ever heard the name Sarah Dark?
No.
Yeah. Just saw a letter in here around.
Sarah Dark. D-A-R-K?
I think
No.
it was it appears that it was the girl before Violette.
Oh.
We got some letters in here.
Oh.
So we have some letters in here.
A romance letter.
Exactly. We're not really sure. And then there was basically the guy that my dad, my grandfather are all named after, Harry Burns, which is the brother. Yeah, it appears it's the brother of Laura Burns. His name was Harry Burns. Didn't know if you knew anything about him.
No, never heard his name mentioned.
We think he worked at a bank. He was a vice president of a bank at the turn of the century. And the only thing we can assume that she loved her brother. He'd done well in life, and so she named her kid after him.
Looks like it.
That's what we
Yeah.
assumed. Do you remember anything about Harry Crisp going to a Peacock Military Academy in San Antonio, Texas?
I just know that he did. I think he got expelled.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Wow, now we're talking some
Most
shit.
like a little hanky
At least
panky.
that was the rumor.
Wow.
That he got expelled. And
Really, Harry and Violet. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm not so
That's
sure.
getting interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he got expelled.
Is this? Oh, go ahead.
He didn't stay maybe a year or less.
I noticed that.
He didn't.
It's very brief.
Yeah, it's a very brief.
I
In and out.
A little blunt.
Yeah.
I assume this is the picture when you sold those Studebaker trucks to my grandfather.
Yeah, yeah, it sure is. And that picture was taken on
Pretty
heck's
bad.
the name of that street that ran right. That D Young.
The Young, yeah.
Yeah. That was
Hey,
on
nobody's
D. Young.
telling you you don't have.
I'm not kidding you, man.
Hey,
Yeah,
no.
that was on D Young, right, very close to West Main Street.
Yes,
That was
it
where
is.
the old plant, first school was.
That's something.
Yeah.
Was that his first trucks? The first fleet of
Yeah,
real
that was his
trucks?
first fleet.
It must be winter because there's no leaves on the tree.
Good point.
Yeah,
And there's some people there, 4 people standing around.
that was part of the, I believe, the old building that he was renting and put this Pepsi-Cola equipment
So this is
And-
probably what almost 40, late 30s. Because he got the Pepsi franchise in 36. So that'd be up to 36.
in. Yeah, well, it would have been, that was probably about F-36, 37, 38, late 30s, yeah. The Pepsi-Cola company arranged for him to get this old plant shipped in. And they were bottling Pepsi-Cola. Hell, damn. The guys that worked in there around where the Pepsi-Cola was being bottled, they all wore boots because his Pepsi-Cola was all over the floor. The damn equipment would occasionally, about every third or fourth bottle, break it.
Yeah.
And so they had to wear all kinds of protective gear to keep from getting cut.
I can only imagine in the winter or the summer with the heat.
It's
I'll
oh,
tell
wow.
you, the flies.
Lee, do you need a
The
sweater?
flies would
Bonfire.
Are you sure?
the flies would practically blow the place. They kept them out, but the screen doors because of the sugar,
Oh, yeah.
Mexico, and oh hell, you go over to the plant. The plant was right behind the Studebaker garage.
Oh wow.
Yeah, Studebaker garage was on the corner of Deena and West Main.
West
North
Main,
Main.
yeah. North Main.
Yeah. Where they, Harry then they had, which was a Ford garage, was next door to where you later had that from Pepsi.
Do you remember this lady, Mrs. D.S. Fairless? Does that name ring a bell? We saw a clipping. We weren't sure who she was.
Yes.
Mrs. Yeah. So she must have been married to a Fairless. This clipping was upstairs in Marion.
Because Dent didn't have, he only had two wives, didn't he? Yes.
That's
Yes,
all right.
wouldn't have been Judy. She had a sister. Mrs. She was very good with it. Beer. Have any idea?
Then we got a little picture here. You recognize any of these people?
Oh, God, isn't that beautiful? I have that. think someplace.
Damn Violette.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah.
Cute kids.
Yeah.
Cute, oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's something.
That Violet and Vivian, that picture then, that clear one, they look like that.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So you weren't born yet.
No.
What year were you born?
1911.
1911.
Can you tell the truth now?
That's going coming
Well,
up.
you know
Yeah.
He could research it. He's
Yeah,
probably
sure.
already got it.
Yeah.
He's checking me. See if I remember.
This guy shows up as interesting too. This guy, it appears that Violet Ferrell apparently had at least a very strong friendship with.
Oh, I bet I know who that
Carl Sanders?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
apparently he died at a very young age.
He did, with diabetes, sugar diabetes. He diabetic and they didn't know how to treat it. But hell, I think they were about the last year in high school, something like that. And when it was determined, he had a hell of a nice guy. Nice looking guy, too. Him and Violet were pretty much in love. And everybody thought one of these days they'd be married. But he died.
There's a name Lon Chaney come up. That's the name Lon Chaney.
Who's that?
Lon Baker.
Lon Baker, I guess, the doctor.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
he
yeah.
comes out,
Yeah.
yeah.
He was in the picture. But,
Yeah.
Harry
I could look a lot different right now.
Oh yeah, you know that.
Cindy was just
Oh
a baby.
yeah.
she asked me, I'll never forget, because she had heard, Violet had been engaged to Lon Baker, and she asked about one day. She said, well, if you'd have married Lon Baker, would we all have mustaches?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
He was a doctor, wasn't he?
Yes,
Yeah.
he was. In fact, he actually delivered me.
Oh, well,
Dr. Baker
darn.
delivered me.
Oh,
his
isn't that
dad
something?
was a doctor.
In fact, I think Dr. Baker actually delivered all the Crisp kids.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
Every one of
Mm-hmm.
That
That's
we call
something.
Baker's dozen.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Almost. Well,
Well, Violet was of course, engaged to him when she met here. And she was very reluctant. It was a blind date. And Mildred Hiller, who was a very good friend of ours, said, Violet, you just got to go. Got this guy. And he's going to be
See the cardinal on the
Yeah.
birdhouse.
That was some more.
Cardinal.
Along the
See
way
the red
in school,
cardinal.
I don't
Pretty.
learn the brain and all. So she said, well, she, will accommodate Mildred. She said, I'll go along. Well, Harry took such a liking to her, that matter to him that she was engaged to Tom.
It's a technicality.
He was so darned aggressive. And here, and boy, we got wind, he was moving in. And when I got here, we had got engaged to a doctor. His family, my father was a doctor, And here's this guy from Benton running a chicken business down the edge of town. Wasn't doing too good at that, particularly. And we were all for a long vehicle. In fact, when Violette and Harry came home that night, and they were holding hands, they walked in the front door and they said, "We're married." Mama just screamed and ran to the bedroom and jumped across the bed and just cried. Her heart was broken. Well, part of it was Harry, Mom wanted to marry Lon Baker. And Harry, even though he was in town just for a short time, he didn't have that good of a reputation. he liked to have a few
Poor
beers,
Harry.
party. He worked pretty hard, and he'd been going around. He got a ticket with the police and going around the square backwards. And that was in the newspaper. Here, Violette had married this guy that's going around the
So they
square.
eloped.
I guess.
They eloped, is what you're saying.
Well, they got married right in Marion. But
Well, was it in a church?
no, it was a justice of peace married. And Violette, she was kind of wanting to mark time a while. And then she was working out of a mine, bookkeeper, stenographer, whatever. And she rode in with 2 or 3 in Marion, back and forth. And they let her out at the square, and then she'd walk on home. And then this particular day, when she got out of the car, Harry was parked throughout. He knew where she'd been at. He already had the ring
Down here.
and the arrangement.
He's
made
crispy. You
for them to
gotta
get
watch
married.
him.
That's us.
And
Yeah.
so, one of Wednesday, I don't forget it. And of course, we didn't have a bathroom in our house. We had to take the bath in the tub, wash the tub. And as a result, we only did that once a week, and that was on Saturday. Kind of a routine type thing. Violette came home from work that Wednesday. Well, when Harry met her, and he said he had the ring and all this. And so she agreed. Okay, we'll get married. So she came home, didn't tell us a damn thing. And she asked me to put on a tub of water so she could take a
Uh-oh.
bath.
Uh-oh.
So I put a tub on the stove, heating water.
How'd you ever get a big tub like that up on the
I
stove?
would do all that. I was the
Yeah,
guy
they're
who had
usually
to
about
do
this
it.
big.
Yeah. Heat the water and I put the tub back in the floor in the kitchen, and where at least I had to get out of the kitchen. I don't know anybody else, but Violette took a bath. And then when she came in, she and Harry came in, about 8:30, whatever, said we're married. And everybody was in shock. And I spoke up and I said, well, we should have known something was, going on. Violette taking a bath in the middle of the week. And about that time, somebody backhanded me. I thought, boy, I broke this case wide open. It should have been a clue that something was going to go on. And
Do you remember any of these people? It looks like Levi Farrell.
yeah, that's Levi, and that's Joseph. Yeah, that's Bob.
Bob to the left.
And that's Mom, right here, Nola.
To his left.
And that's Fanny.
Fanny to her left. And
Is that somebody in the middle? Who is this little gal?
Oh, that's my grandmother, his wife.
Oh.
look how tall he is.
Yeah.
Wow. Yes.
And they had 6
This
kids.
is your mom right here?
Yeah.
This is your mom right
Yeah.
here.
Tops.
Yeah. that's-
Mother Farrell.
Nola.
Yeah.
Nola.
Nola
Uh-huh.
Fairless.
Uh-huh.
And what relation is this girl to her left to her?
They're sisters.
That's her sister.
Mhm.
What's her name again?
Fanny Atwood. She married Atwood.
Fanny.
Fanny.
Who's this right here in the middle?
That's my grandfather.
Your grand,
Yeah,
your
I,
great
I
grandfather.
lived with no,
That's
you know, I lived with him till I was school age, and then every summer
Well, he's tall.
Isn't he?
I'd go
He's
back.
tall.
I'd go back to the farm, stay there with them during the summer vacation.
You would.
Yeah, I did that for years. But they wanted to get me out of the house, and I wanted to get out of the house.
What did Bob do? Robert Farrell?
Mom, when he started working for a streetcar company there in Dallas.
Lived in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, where I forget where the Texas A&M University where it was located, but anyway, when he got out of college, he took a job with this company that had the streetcars in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then he worked for them, and I think he started originally with them as in summertime as a streetcar conductor when he was in college. And then he started working for him, and he stayed with the company clear until he retired.
What do you roughly? I was trying to figure out what date this picture may have been taken, and I'm not sure when Levi or his wife Nola, or I'm sorry, what's his wife? Josephine passed away. But I was looking kind of at
Kathy,
Mother
how's your
Farrell's.
water? Needs
Like
touch up
maybe
on
she's
your
in
water or anything?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Alright.
No,
Can you tell?
because everybody looked much older, back
Back
then.
then.
Yeah. And no, she when that picture was taken, I don't think she and Paul were married at that time. She got married, so she was in her late 20s. So she'd be in her late 20s.
So
Maybe 30.
And so, what year would you guess? What year was she born? Do you remember roughly? Have it be prior? Probably be. Let's see. She got married. I know she got married in 1899.
You talking about your mother?
Nola.
Well, when did she die? Because she was 100 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
She made it to 100. So when did
Wait
she?
a minute.
Yeah.
1899.
That'd
be 1994. She never died in 1999. Way before that.
You and I were.
She died in the 70s, didn't she?
I think it's about.
I think she did because I think it was the 70s.
I think so.
Or the 70s.
I think it was too. So she was born in 1877.
Something roughly. And then this probably would have been roughly 1890 to 1900ish.
Yeah.
I would think so.
Turn of the century.
Yeah.
And I believe she was the first teacher in the Fairless family. I might point
Really?
that out.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah,
She was a teacher.
Yeah, she
I
was.
didn't know that.
Yeah, she was teaching school when she met my dad. My dad had been married, and his wife had passed away. And he was still in his 20s, or late 20s, and they had a daughter. And this daughter was in Mom's class, Julia. And so, for some reason, Pop came to school. I don't know what reason it was, but then Mom met him, and his wife had been dead for a couple of years, I guess, at that time. And he was running the mill in Ferrell Springs.
So he was married before.
Yeah, he was married before and had one daughter,
What was her name?
Julia.
Julia.
And she, of course, when her mother died, but then she went to live with her grandmother, Ferrell. At that time, her name was
DuPont.
Yeah, because my grandfather, Ferrell, had died during the Civil War. And he was still in the military at the time he died. And my grandmother married John DuPont.
The one.
They thought they had adopted my dad. His name was DuPont. He went with the name DuPont for a number of years. And then when he married, I guess it was his first time when he got married. Then he found out that the adoption papers had never been processed, and it's illegal. His name was still Ferrell's. So then he took the name Ferrell's.
What was the Farrell? Was it Farrell?
Ferrell.
Fearless.
So he'd gone all through school with the name of DuPont.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
And you said his dad was in the war?
Uh-huh.
The Civil War?
Yeah,
Was
Civil
North
War.
or South?
South.
South,
Yeah.
do you know what state or anything?
Well, they were from Illinois, but he died in Memphis, Tennessee. His regiment he was assigned to. He didn't get killed. He died of natural causes.
Yeah, a lot of diseases.
Yeah. And, so he never came back home. And then my mother, grandmother, married John DuPont.
What was her name?
Her name was Luann. Everybody called her 18. One of the neighbors in the house so 18. L-U-A-N-D-A, something like that.
Lucinda?
Yeah, I think it was Lucinda.
Lucinda?
That name shows up.
Yeah, I think
Lucinda, I
Lucinda.
think that was
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's what it was. Lucinda.
Something.
So Julia would have been your half sister, is that right?
Yeah, Julia was my half sister. She never did live with us. She stayed on with her grandmother. And grandmother raised her. She never lived with us. And was never really very close to us for some reason. Well, I guess because my grandmother always stayed with us friends. She and I guess that's how my dad got into the milling business because he made fun.
The DuPonts were?
And so I guess that's why my dad got into it.
And there's a connection with the DuPont paint too, or whatever that industry is.
Yeah. Pretty well off financially those times.
Do you remember, is this Robert Ferrell, this picture here? This is a very early picture.
Well, I don't know. It's either Bob or Gib.
Gib?
Yeah. The two brothers. They had three brothers. There's three of them, and one of them died. Went back when he was still a child.
How are they related to you?
They'd be my mother's brother, so they'd be my uncle.
Your uncle?
That's uncle. That's it. Oh, that's uncle. Yeah,
That's
pretty
Gilbert?
sure. Yeah. That's Gilbert. So the other guy would be Bob. They look kind of have a family resemblance, but yeah, that's Gil. Anyway, he graduated as an attorney and law from Stanford.
Really?
Yeah, Stanford, and
Gilbert did?
and he took his first job as state's assistant state's attorney. Or they
Something
call it
old
district
Kathy
attorney
those dresses.
in San Mateo County. San Mateo
Glad we
County.
don't have to wear those now.
Oh, yes.
It's from
Get all
San
corseted up.
Francisco on down
Get
to
skinny.
clearly, including Palo Alto.
Smart how you did that.
And it's amazing. He did a 4-year hitch assistant as district attorney, and the district attorney retired, didn't run the second term, and he ran, and he got elected, and he stayed as district attorney till he retired for about 30 some odd years.
Wow.
Nobody could ever beat him. He was so well liked and a good attorney. He kept that job going. He got
And it wasn't his name was Gilbert?
Gilbert.
Farrell.
Gilbert Ferrell.
Wow.
Freddie,
He
look
was
at this.
district attorney in
Look
San
at how,
Mateo
look,
County.
he's got the picture there. How smart are you anyway? Hey, the picture and then here. Who are they? I think that's clever. Wait.
Does that ring any bell? Good looking gals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure who they are though. Kathy, do you recognize these two? Let's see. Take a look at these two.
Yeah, Kathy, get in this business.
I have no idea.
Let's see if Kathy knows.
Does that ring a bell?
That's not a picture that I've ever seen.
I had them written down on my CD. Your CD, you should, yeah. And I don't read that. Yeah, well.
Well, at least you have it written down. So
Yeah.
That's
Let's see. Are you still good to go? And does this ring a bell? This picture? This
I'll
house?
that's
see.
that house.
I don't know if you can, how good your eyes are, but there's an iguana sitting on one of those boulders at the end, on the other side of the umbrella, and that's where they like to hang out and sun themselves. And then eventually they'll go over the other side and down into a little cavern or something they have under there.
So Violet was born in that
I
house.
was born in
And that's in Krill Springs.
that house. You remember
We've
the
seen that.
picture
Real
of,
Springs.
my dad with, and I think Vivian, and I think he was feeding some pigs or some chickens or something.
I've got that picture
Yeah.
too.
And that's right behind this house.
So did he have the pigs and all that just for his own use? And
Yeah,
The,
yeah.
the
Yeah,
milling
it
was his
yeah.
business.
Yeah, yeah, and, yeah. Everybody had chickens and pigs and cow.
And then this is in Kingman, Kansas, in 1905.
Oh, that's a nice home. Never seen that.
Is that one of the when he had the mill in
Yeah,
Kansas?
he had a mill in Kansas. That's where Vivian was born.
So Vivian was born in Kansas,
Yeah.
Kingman, Kansas,
Mm-hmm.
and Violet was born in Creel.
Yeah, Violette and Dent both were born in
Where were you born?
Creole. Yeah, I was born in Creole too.
Creel.
Oh no, I was born in Creole.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I
Where
was
were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Creole.
He was just hatched out there on the farm with the pigs and the chickens. Are you sure?
Yeah.
And you said he had mills at like Bunko?
Well, and I had one in Bunker and one in Vienna
Vienna.
and then one in Kentucky.
Kansas.
Yeah, Kansas.
Now these flour mills are just
Yeah.
what they are.
He died there one, didn't
And
They, in fact, I had a sister who was buried there. She died in a matter of days after she was born. They were living there at the time. I can't remember where it was. I know one place in Kentucky.
he? Viola?
No. In fact, we drive by on our way to Marion a few times.
Yeah, I remember.
saw a sign saying,
it was in Western Kentucky.
yeah, it was just, it would have been Western Kentucky.
This is a picture of a John DuPont. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, that's my,
It's a really faded picture, but we
yeah,
can get it.
that's the one, that's who my grandmother married when my grandfather Ferrell died. When he died there more than she married John DuPont.
What was your Farrell's name that died in the war again?
His name was Wiley.
Wiley Farrell.
Mhm.
Okay, see, I'm hearing all these names, and this is putting it together for me.
Mhm.
So Wiley Farrell was in the war,
Mhm. Civil War.
or you believe he fought for the South?
Oh yeah, I know him. Yeah, because my grandmother always had slaves. And in fact, she had to build sales and slaves. I don't know what happened to her. She died, passed away. Yeah, we didn't realize he was something.
Dent had a few, I remember.
Well, maybe so.
Dent had him in Charleton.
Yeah, maybe so.
I remember.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess so.
So Wiley Farrell fought for the South, and then when he died in Memphis,
Mhm.
then your grandmother met and married John DuPont,
Mhm.
and John was in the milling business. you
Yeah.
said,
Ferrell Springs.
in Korea.
Well, what was your dad's name?
He was also named Wiley.
Well, that's what I thought. Two Wileys.
Charleton. Charleton Wiley. Wiley Charleton.
Oh, all right. I was wondering.
Did they ever refer to him as Charlie at all?
No, I don't think so.
Just Wiley.
Yeah.
Here we go. Celebration of New Year's already.
We believe this is a picture. Does these names ring a bell? We weren't really sure. We've heard it called Frances or Josephine Violet Ferrell and daughter Fanny.
Yeah, that was Josephine Violet, was my grandmother's name.
Do you think that's her?
That's her, yeah.
And the little child next to her down on the ground is Fanny?
Is that your
Ferrell.
Aunt Fanny?
No, I think that's Aunt Fanny's oldest boy, Ferrell.
Really?
Well, no, that's a girl. Yeah, that would be Aunt
So your aunt.
Fanny. Yeah.
But she never went by Frances or anything. It was Josephine Violet.
Mm-hmm. Joseph.
So she went by Josephine?
Yeah.
Is that where... So that would be your...
Violet was her family name before she married Ferrell.
Ah, okay. That was
So
her
it's
family.
not an
Yeah.
individual girl. That was the last name. I
Gotcha.
guess.
Yeah, that's her name.
That's all I
Last
have.
name was Ferrell.
And there's
Yeah.
Levi Ferrell
Uh-huh.
and Frances... Or Josephine Violet Ferrell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Is this how you remember them?
Yeah.
That age? Or
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, I lived with her.
what were their personalities like?
Oh, she had a personality that looks like Violet in a way. She's always doing something, going somewhere. And busy.
Didn't want to stay home.
No, well, every time the telephone would ring, they lived in the country, so everybody's phone would ring at the same time. And everybody had different rings. And the phone would ring, and she'd run to get a chair to get up and listen to what this.
Oh yeah.
Dear, what's
And
going
then
on?
if it's something
who was
she
being
knew something
invited that
about,
she
she'd
wasn't?
speak up, And she always had a chair. She had to get in the chair and get up to the telephone. And my grandfather had it up so high on the wall where he could use
Yeah,
it.
good for him.
Now, who was this?
She was
This is,
always,
This is Nola, right? Nola Fairless?
my grandmother.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, my grandmother.
His grandmother.
Josephine Ferrell. And we had a picture here with you in it. We're not sure who all the people are. We think it's Vivian and
Topsy, Nola,
Yeah, that's my
Nola
mother,
and Laura.
And Aunt Laura.
that's Laura,
Yeah,
my,
Aunt
her
Laura.
other sister.
her sister.
Laura White.
Before we start this one, you made some really interesting comments about Judge White
Yeah.
and how he influenced you
Yeah.
in your early.
Oh, yeah.
Because I guess he was a major father figure to
Yeah,
you.
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I would say so. In fact, I used to, way back, as soon as I got my driver's license, I would drive into Carroll where he'd hold court and Murfreesboro and around, so spend the day, there with him.
Always carried a little Mickey or something.
Yeah.
Did?
Oh, he
He did?
did, yeah. Oh, hell,
A
he
little
did.
libation.
We'd leave about 4 o'clock in the morning from Carroll because he'd start court at 7, which the attorneys, nobody wanted. But you had to be in. You're gonna hear your case. You better be there at 7 o'clock or whatever. And hell, he'd leave Marion and he'd have a pint of whiskey, a bourbon, whatever. And by the time he got to Carroll, he'd have it completely emptied, and he didn't even have any breakfast that I was aware of. And then, damn, he'd go in and hold court, and he'd be mean as hell. But I tell you, they had such a backlog of cases way back at that time, and due to his schedule, because he'd stay from whole court from 7 to maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and he'd get the cases cleared, and he got the docket where but boy, he was a pretty good boozer, but you'd never know it. He'd never sleep maybe more than 2 hours a night, 2 or 3 whatever, and then he'd be reading and whatever he'd be doing, reviewing papers the rest of the time. But boy, he could be drinking, and you just never know it. He didn't show it all.
What's your
Yeah.
What's your recollection? You said as a child, the story you told me about when it snowed.
Yeah.
How old were you?
Yeah, Uncle George. Yeah, when I guess I was in the first, maybe the second grade, and from noon to maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we had about 3 feet of snow blowing. You just couldn't believe the winter that we was having, and of course school's out and I got to go home, and my mother's working. She can't be there, of course. And I had no idea how I was going to get home. And when everybody's parents was there picking up their first graders, second graders, but nobody going to be there to pick me up. I went out and Uncle George was there.
Yeah, so you got picked up.
Yeah, he put me up on his shoulder and walked me all the way home. And we
Walked all the
lived
way
1
home.
hell of a way from the school.
So he walked there in the snow.
Oh yeah, walked there in the snow. We must have had, I'd estimate from where we lived to the school, it must have been 2 miles, mile and a half, whatever. And he went back to work.
So he left work for that.
Yeah,
To pick him
Yeah.
up.
Wow.
That's pretty nice.
but he was that kind of a guy, very thoughtful.
When your
Yeah.
father died
Mhm.
and Vivian found him, you mentioned what did Judge White do at that time?
Well, Mom called him, of course, because she didn't have anybody. I had 6 kids. Well, I had 5. One Elsie had passed away then. And so he came on down to Vienna, and he just took charge and took us all home with him, every one of us. And we must have lived there a year or 2 years, something like that, right in the same house where he and his family lived. And he was as good to us as if he'd have been our own dad. Study with us at night. They had a big round dining room table, and he'd say, well, it's time to get to do your homework, you know. And he'd go, he used to be a teacher before he studied law. And he'd go around and work with me and work with Velma and Vivian, Violette, whatever, you know. But just patience, and he would just, he was just very disciplined, like, and he wanted spelling correctly, and you know, your multiplication tables and things like that. And he just worked with you on it till you learned them. And he was always,
Well, he didn't
was
teach you
always
how,
there
he
for
didn't
us.
teach you how to spell.
No, he didn't teach me how to spell. No.
But he
Sure.
tried. He tried.
Yeah, I'll tell you. You can teach me how to spell a word today, and I'll be asking you tomorrow how you spell the damn thing.
Yeah, I wonder why that is.
I just don't retain it for some reason.
He doesn't try because he thinks somebody's going to be around to help him. Yeah.
Well, Lee's got the same problem with his dad. He never could spell.
But it's true, my dad can't spell. You know
No.
what it is? I cannot remember names. I try so hard.
Associates.
I try. I can remember faces and numbers to the nth degree.
Uh-huh.
I can remember phone numbers. I can remember phone numbers for 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But when it comes to names, for some reason, the way my brain's wired, I just can't
Isn't
remember.
that something?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows why?
Yeah, you never know
Yeah.
why. That's one thing I'm pretty good at.
Oh, yeah.
You are. I can
Yeah,
tell.
Uh-huh.
names.
Yeah.
I can do pretty good there.
Yeah.
This one here is, I guess, a picture of Wiley Charlton. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Charleton.
Farrell, your dad.
They may have called him, you know, guys that knew him, they may have called him Charlie. I think Mother, a few times I heard her mention his name, was Wiley. And so I don't know
That's a pretty picture.
other than Wiley.
From what we understand, that is on their wedding day.
Oh, it might have been.
It might have been.
Very
I
pretty.
don't really recall, but that's probably right.
And okay, we got the part, Kathy, didn't we, when he was explaining about how he thought he was adopted in a Fairless, but ended up being a DuPont, or he thought it was a DuPont, was formerly a DuPont, going to be a DuPont, but really ended up being a Fairless because the paperwork didn't go through.
I think so.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Good. And then we got
Oh, look at
Oh,
that.
that's a
That's
good one.
precious.
Now that's Julia. That was the girl by his first marriage.
okay. I wondered that because I couldn't put that together. Who is this girl in the picture?
And her mother died when her mother was still in her 20s when she died. In fact, my dad is buried next to his first wife.
Where's your dad buried?
In Creel Springs.
Next to his first
Yeah,
wife?
next to his first wife.
Did he choose that?
Well, no, he didn't choose it, but my mother said they owned the lot. And it was just, Mom couldn't go out and pick out a lot. And Uncle George was renting it. And his dad was also buried in that plot.
And his dad is buried in that plot.
Yeah.
A Fairless.
Right. And so I don't know what the circumstances were, other than the weather was pretty lousy, and so Mom said, well, she had no objection to it, and because she had passed away, his first wife had, and Mom met him 3 years later. And,
Who were those two children?
yeah, that's Dent and Violette.
Dent and Violette.
Yeah.
And that's probably around 1903,
Let's see.
04? Because she was born in 02.
Yeah, that's probably
Nine.
about right, yeah.
Oh, two.
Uh-huh. It's a good picture.
Dent was the oldest one?
Yeah, Dent was about 2 years apart. I think Dent was born 1901, wasn't he?
Something rings a
Violet's
bell,
about
1900, who's
1903.
that?
Could be.
No,
Yeah.
it's
Well,
1901,
maybe
I think,
901.
honey.
Mm-hmm.
And
Isn't that a
Violet
cute
was-
picture?
And Helen, what do you recall about her? Do you recall talking to her?
To Topsy?
Or Violet.
Or any of the above, actually?
Oh,
Helen,
well,
we don't know.
oh, sure.
Violet.
Well, I didn't know Freddie's dad, of course, and I didn't know Julia, but Topsy's we called her.
You call
Nola.
her Topsy.
Topsy, we called her Topsy. When Freddie and I first got married, and we, at 605, let's see what the hell, I can't remember that name. 605 anyway. Virginia, South Virginia Avenue. Yeah, I got Virginia, South Virginia Avenue. And we were staying upstairs. So when we saw Topsy come up the first time to see us, she had her hair in all curlers, and she took it out, and her hair was all fluffy. So I think that began the word Topsy. But maybe it wasn't. But that's what I first started calling. I never called her Nola.
No
But she
kidding.
was a sweet gal. Oh yeah. She and I got along very, very well. Thank God. Yeah. Because this thing, you had a lot of gals dragged back. But we did. We got along. We got along really
So that
great.
was your mother-in-law.
Yeah. And then of course Dent. I know Dent way back.
What was Dent like?
He had the most gorgeous eyes, and I thought handsome. Oh, he was what you call a movie star. Handsome, always laughing, always jovial, always good-hearted. He would give the shirt off your back to him. But of course, then he started drinking and stuff, and ended up sad, of course, like everything else.
He had a good personality, but he was always broke. He never had any money to go with the personality.
But I loved Deena. Of course, Violet, loved her dearly. She and I got along great too. Yeah, we had fun going to, they came to Hawaii and
But
everything.
Dent was,
We had
Mom said,
lots of good times.
Dent was very close to my dad. At the time my dad passed away, I guess about 13 or 14. And it was a real big shock to him. And Dent was pretty well upset with my dad being dead, and he never really, when we all went to my Uncle George's house, he took off. I don't know where he went to, and I don't think Mom did either. Didn't hear from him, but he went somewhere. I think he took up with a circus that had been in town and started working for them and left with them. I think that seemed to me as if that's what they said. But Dent never really, after my dad died, he didn't live with us. He joined the army when he was about 17, whatever.
So remember World War One?
No, World War One. He never really went. I don't think he was in World War One. It must have been over with at that time. I don't recall. But Dent never really. I never really got to know him as a brother hardly, because he just hadn't lived with us enough that I got to know him more after I got grown. And a few times when Helen and I were stationed out near in California, close to where he lived, and we got pretty well acquainted with him then.
Hamilton.
But he had personality that Helen said 2 or 3 times, I wish you had the personality your brother's got.
Oh, and to be so handsome. I mean, he was handsome.
He was taller than I.
Oh yeah, I like tall men. When I get a short one.
But he didn't have the responsibility character, that my dad has.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I got the best of it too,
Yeah.
as far as that goes.
From what I'm sensing too, it sounds like that you being with Judge White at that age especially really helped mold you.
It probably did. It probably had some effect. I didn't realize it at the time, but it probably did.
And then he didn't have that.
No, he never got along with my Uncle George. And my Uncle George, he was pretty much a disciplined type guy, and Dent never wanted that.
Kind of goes back to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why Dent left home after Dad died. He just hardly spent very little time with us.
But I remember when we were living at Homestead Air Force Base or at 12895, that he was living in California, Dent. But 3-hour difference. He would be calling 5 o'clock in the morning, our time sometimes.
And then
he never got that straight.
No.
Wow.
Usually wanting to borrow money. Yeah. And I said, Dad, you never paid me back the last time or the time before that. And but I will this time. And well, it worked for a while, and then I finally I told him I could tell.
Well, it's dry.
Boy, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I'm not loaning you any more money. But he always would he'd write a bad check or some damn thing. He'd get to playing cards, or he loved to gamble, and he'd make an IOU or whatever, and then they'd start putting some pressure on him, and he'd call me and he'd say, I gotta have $200, or I'm gonna be going to jail. And I said, you just going to jail, I'm not gonna give it to you, Dad. And so he finally quit calling me because I wasn't doing any good.
Wow. Let's see what we got here. Julia Fairless. That's around 1950.
There you go.
That's your half sister.
That's your half sister. She's a good looking girl.
Yeah, she was very pretty. Very pretty.
Yeah.
She married a guy that was captain of the football team there in Creel
Girl
Springs.
Spring.
Yeah, an Italian guy, Beer. His
1950.
name, Bill.
Where did she end up?
They moved finally to Stockton, California, and I don't know why. Stockton, I don't recall. And he worked for some trucking company for years and years.
She married that football player?
Yeah, she married the football
No
player.
kidding.
Yeah.
From high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they never had any kids. They both got very fat in their old days.
They did?
Well, we talk.
Oh, you guys are slim.
Yeah.
If I hold it in. covered up with sweater.
I hadn't seen Julia. Oh, I don't suppose I'd seen her since maybe 8 or 9 years old, whatever. No, I don't guess I saw her after my dad died. No, I don't guess.
You never saw her again after your dad?
No, I don't think I did.
So it was
I
roughly.
never remember. And I went out to California when I was in high school to one summer to visit Dent, and then of course Dent was in San Francisco, he and his wife, and so I went over he took me over to see Julia, and he didn't let Julia know that I was there or whatever, and they had 3 or 4 goats that gave milk, and they had some thing going for them that they thought goat milk was the cure for just about everything. And so Dent put me up to it. He said, go to the house and knock and tell them, that you want to see Julia, because she's the one that sells goat milk. And so I did, and her husband answered the door. I told him I wanted to see Julia, and Julia, he walked back in the room in the house, and he called her and he said, Julia wants to see you. And he said, some young man. And Julia said, well, who is he? And Bill said, well, I don't know, but I know he's a Fairless. And he had a good feeling that that's who I was. But he recognized right off. He said, it's a Fairless.
And that's something.
And Julia, but that was the first time I had ever remembered seeing Julia. And so Dent stayed with them for a number of years. And in fact, when they died, they had a house, pretty nice house, out to the edge of Stockton. And they had 4 or 5 acres. And they willed it all to Dent, got everything. They said they were determined that Dent would always have a home, someplace to come home to. Well, at Dent, within a year or two, he had, either through gambling or whatever, he'd sold the place, and he was married some gal, and well, he sold the place to pay off her house. She had a house. She'd been married before and had 2 or 3 kids, fairly grown teenagers, I guess. But this is how bad a judgment he would use. He married this gal, and she talked him into selling Julia's place and paying off hers, which he did. And then shortly after that, she left him. Yeah. And so he didn't have Julia's house to go back to, and they'd split up. And but he made more bad decisions that were financially financial disasters. He never got a place bought or paid for, or ever owned a car or anything else. He could never get that much money.
Wow.
Yet he always made good money. Boy, he had good jobs, and he was smart. He could do many things, but he never knew the value of a dollar. He could just gamble it away, or whatever. Never realized anything.
Oh, look at that.
I think Violet's in
Violet.
School picture.
Isn't
Yeah,
that
isn't
precious?
Is that Violet or Dent on the front row? I guess it's Violet, isn't it, on the front row?
Looks like it.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
think that's Violet, yeah.
Somebody's missing in
Yeah.
between. Unless she didn't like that girl. You might not.
That's probably
What would
right.
this be, about 2nd grade or one-room schoolhouse, or what is
So
this?
this is probably around 1910 in a one-room schoolhouse. Looks like. Are the kids varying in ages?
Looks like
Yeah.
the ones in the back are.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
varying in ages.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably so. The one
So
teacher.
Dent must be in the 2nd row. No, the front.
Is that Dent? There's an arrow going to that person.
Oh, that
Yeah,
could
that
be.
is Dent.
Yeah,
And
and
then
then,
Vivian?
yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I'll bet you.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
Is this
is.
the
No, no,
an
no.
arrow here?
Yeah.
For Violet.
Violet.
and Arrow there for
It's
Dent.
Dent,
Yes.
yeah. It sure is. I don't think I'd seen that picture.
Oh, I know why this girl's not sitting next to, because she hadn't had her bath yet. It must have been taken on a Friday.
Yeah, that has to be in one room school. And she's probably teaching all those grades.
And that's
Isn't
not.
that something how they could do that
That's
back then?
cute.
I don't know how
And
they
do
do
a damn good job of it.
I don't know how they do
Yeah,
it.
yeah, Uncle George, well, that's how he met Aunt Laura. He was a teacher and Aunt Laura was in school, and it was a one-room schoolhouse, and he was the teacher there, and Aunt Laura was in one of the grades, I guess. I don't I don't think she ever went to, I know she didn't go to college. So, but she married Uncle George.
That's a
He was
cute picture, isn't it?
And he studied law after he and Aunt Laura got married.
So they're both teachers, met that way,
Yeah.
and then he went to law school.
No, she was a student.
She was a
She was a
student.
student in the school like this, and she was one of the top class, or if it was sixth grade or whatever, the first to sixth. Well, she had to be more than that because she got married. They got married after he quit the teaching that particular school, and they were seeing each other, and then they got married. And he went to law school. He'd saved enough money that he went to law school, and she went with him. And I don't know what she did, if she worked or whatever, but he went through law school after they got married. That's good. Yeah, that's
There's
see, that's taken
There's
at the back of
Velma,
the house where Violet was born.
Violet.
Cindy, we rode down to Creel Springs one time when I was here, back there, maybe 8-10 years ago, and the house was still standing. Where Violet and Cindy, I thought, took a picture of it.
Wow.
Yes, she did.
Yeah,
She
I
did
think she
take.
did.
So you think
Yeah.
it may still be standing?
It was at that
In
time.
10 years?
And it's been torn down now. The last time we went back to Marion, I went and drove down to Creel, the house had been torn down.
Yes.
And it was in bad repair when Cindy took the picture of the house. It was getting pretty, not
That's
one
a
bit
good picture.
maintained.
Those are nice
It was
fat
such
pigs,
an
aren't
old-
they?
And she also took the picture of my grandmother DuPont's house there in Creel Springs, which was part brick and part frame.
Well, something was a nursing home. No, that's what I think Vivian said if she had to go, she'd want to go. Wasn't there a nursing
Oh,
home?
yeah, the big nursing
Yeah.
home there in Creel, yeah.
That's not your dad's den, there is.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah.
dad, yeah.
They get
About Vivian
Velma.
and Velma, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe Dean,
Vivian.
Dent.
No, there's 3 girls. Velma,
Yeah.
Velma, your dad,
Yeah.
Vivian, and
Yeah,
Violet.
that's Vivian with her eyes covered up.
Yeah, that's cute.
Yeah.
Cute,
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah.
And then we found this in one of the Bibles. It was just a note. It said we had letters from Levi Ferrell, grandfather of Vivian Rogers, Wiley Charlton Fairless, which you made comments on. And then there's this one, something Ferrell, brother of Nola Fairless.
Yeah, Robert.
Robert, okay, we already talked about him.
Robert,
Okay.
Well, that's very, very nice.
And those were the ones we didn't know who they
I
were.
have no idea who they are. Never seen
Now,
them.
wait a minute, say Allie, Alan,
Allie, Allen Fairless, and her sister.
Well, that'd be my father's first wife. Her name was Allie.
Your father's first
Yeah,
wife.
that'd be my father's first wife.
And that's her sister.
Yeah,
and
well,
that's
I
Allie.
suppose so, yeah. Yeah, Allie was her name.
that must be his first wife.
Yeah, Allie.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well, we broke some new ground here, Alan.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I had forgotten her name, but Allie was her name.
Wow.
Got a pretty dress on.
They're both beautiful women.
Yeah.
And then this, you put it all together when we talked today, but we found letters to Mrs. Nola Fairless from her husband, and it was listed as the Bunkum Mill and Elevator Company.
I'll be darned.
We got the letters from 1910.
I'll be good.
Why is it writing from the bunkum?
That's a good. That's what we said.
Yeah, and now you know.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But why would he be writing his wife? So he left without her? He's there and she. And
Well,
she's
many
not?
times he did. He'd go out when he went out to Kansas. I know that was.
Yeah, see, she's in Marion here.
Ah.
So he was at Bunkum, and he wrote her in Marion, Illinois. See, whoops.
Yep, you're right because there's bumping.
Uh-huh,
So-
yeah,
Mhm.
on the stamp,
Uh-huh.
Cancellation.
cancellation, yeah.
So it's normal for him. He would go somewhere and he'd work for a while.
Oh yeah, to get a mill. If he bought a new mill, and then he got things going, and then he'd buy a house or rent a house or what, and then Mom and Violette and Vivian and Dent would join him, and so that was sort of the pattern that they had. And let me read that.
Oh, you're nosy,
Right
right too. Love letter. Guess not a love letter if he's gone on. Hope you're still feeding the pigs, you feed the kids.
here. Send you some stamps so you won't have an excuse of not writing.
He's got a sense of humor. We've got 4 pages to that letter from 1910.
Isn't that, oh, great.
My God.
I mean, unbelievable stuff.
It was.
Oh my
I don't know
God.
where you ever got that. I never saw that.
Isn't that something?
We have their love letters too. Remember when they
Wow.
were
Yeah.
first dating?
When they were first
No
dating.
kidding.
Mhm.
I mean, unbelievable. See, like all mine, when I was dating, I burned them.
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, big time.
Well, I know because some of those we wouldn't wake it up.
That's
Pretty
right.
hot anyway.
Yeah. Wow.
They actually have ratings for things like that
Yeah, that's
now.
right, but not
Children
anymore,
don't
they're
mind
ashes.
it.
That's
Ashes was-
interesting. I got it.
That's very
See, I think
nice.
that might be one of the last ones.
Oh,
there
look
we go.
at that.
Yeah, my grandfather.
Levi.
He has to be sitting down right
Yeah,
now.
he is.
Oh,
He's sitting
yeah.
there, she's standing.
Standing up.
Yeah, now she's taller than he is.
Yeah, he's 6'3".
Isn't that something?
He went out to milk one morning, and the morning that he died, and when he didn't come back to the house, my grandmother went out to the barn to see, why he didn't come back, bring the milk in, and he had finished milking, and he was milking in a stall where the cow was, and he had the stool that he was sitting on, and he moved the stool back. And he had kind of leaned back in the corner like, and he was dead.
Oh, that's a
still
good way to
sitting
go.
there. Still sitting there.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
That's your grandfather.
Yeah, I'm my
Yeah.
grandfather.
And then your dad died the same way, a heart attack.
Yeah.
Probably, right?
But
Yeah.
your dad just died a lot younger. So
Oh yeah, my dad was only 52.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and it's something. His dad was approximately 52 when he died during World War I, or no, during the Civil War.
Really?
Yeah, he was around 52. Yeah, I'd heard my mother say that.
So you said he died of natural causes. It could have been a heart attack.
No, I think he had been seriously ill with some, I don't know, fever or something.
It was like the
disease.
malaria.
What it was, yeah. And for a couple of weeks, something like that.
You don't happen to know what rank even roughly was if he was an officer.
I don't remember ever hearing what he was, what rank he was. There used to be some letters, several letters that he had written to my grandmother, and I think Dent had them all out there with him. I don't know what happened. Julia had them really, and then when she died, Dent had them. But I don't know what he ever did with them. But I do remember reading some of them, and they were very formal. He'd write to my grandmother, and he would address her as Mrs.
whatever her first name was, DuPont. And you wouldn't realize it. He was his wife.
It's his wife.
Yeah, I think that was customary back then, you know.
It was so
the way
formal.
you did, like you write dear so and so, you know, now when they're not dear at all, you know, to you, you just write dear, you
Listen
know.
to that.
So I think that was probably, you know.
Well, that is
I'm
the.
sure that is a wedding picture.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. You kids have really.
Yeah.
Well, that was the extent of it.
Yeah.
We really
Wow.
appreciate you doing
You
this.
mean that's the end now?
Yeah.
I mean, no, but I mean, you still got more to go?
Basically, this is it. This is the last thing we wanted
That's
to do.
what I meant.
Uh-huh.
You have spent 6 months doing it, and this is the finale of it?
Mhm.
Isn't that
Trying
something?
to tie up the loose ends. And
Yep, the little loose ends that we didn't
I think
understand.
it's just wonderful.
We've got a
What
lot of
you kids
materials.
have done.
We found that there's a it's amazing amount of records on the Fairlesses and the
Thank
Ferrells all in Southern Illinois.
Yeah.
And,
right.
you know, we show up a lot. The Ferrells and the Fairlesses and the Chris in Southern Illinois, so. it's
That's
been-
off now, Kathy?
My grandfather
Kathy?
Ferrell,
Is that thing off
he
now?
was very active
Your
on my mother's
Mother's father.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Levi.
Levi.
Ferrell, yeah.
The one with the beard?
Yeah, one of the beard.
And he was the one that was in banking?
Yeah, he was one of the founders of the bank there in Creel Springs.
And and he had the farm.
Yeah, he had the farm and a big farm, and he had 2 or 3 large peach orchards, pear orchards, apple orchards, and grape vineyards.
Wow.
Yeah, and well, he shipped an awful lot of them. They carried, take it by wagon in the Creel. Funny, you know, the Creel was only 3 miles away, and that was an all-day trip going to Creel Springs and back in the wagon.
From Marion?
Yeah, no, from his farm into Creel was it was 3 miles, but you go in a wagon, and it's so slow going and coming back. It was an all-day trip to go into Creel and transact some business or whatever, and go back before dark. I'll never forget one time, still the dirt roads all the way out to his farm. And Aunt Laura and Uncle George had an automobile. It was a Page, and the thing was about almost like a Greyhound bus, big.
This is Ron, yes.
Under the front seats.
Hey, fine.
It had seats that folded out
Yes.
from the back of the front
Yes, doing
seats.
really
So
fine.
you had 3 rows.
Yes.
of
Did you have a nice Christmas?
Well, we were all had all gone down to visit my granddad
thank you.
on a Sunday, and
Uh-huh.
no, it wouldn't have been a Sunday.
Well,
It would have
thank
to
you
be a
very
weekday.
much. Thank you very much.
And Uncle
Well,
George,
everybody's
driving his
doing
Page,
fine, thank you.
and we come up to a hill.
Okay, just a minute, Here.
And down at the bottom of the hill was a wagon with a couple of mules and a woman and a man on it. And they was just sitting on a board.
Well, how are
That was
you?
across the top of the wagon, didn't have a seat. And she was sitting there with a big box full of eggs that she's taking to Creel Springs to sell.
Just fine.
And the mules got scared
Yeah,
of
we
this
got
car.
company right now.
And they
Yeah.
started
So
rearing up.
we've got some
and pretty soon
relatives
they
here
lunched
visiting
ahead.
us.
And she went over backwards
Oh,
with the
no.
eggs and everything.
Yeah, call me
I
back
wouldn't like to
tomorrow,
watch.
okay?
Buying her eggs, he paid her for the
Okay,
eggs.
thank you. You get better now.
She
Okay,
looked
thank
like
you,
a
the
mess.
same
I
to
don't know,
you.
it was a big, I don't know, box. She had to have several dozen eggs.
Eggs all over.
Yeah, and she had them in her lap, and she went over.
Yeah, okay. Bye-bye.
Good boy. All those eggs over.
Clarita.
Oh my
I
God.
hear a cat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I heard that.
I hope so.
No, I bet you it's peacock.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably peacocks.
Damn
There's
peacock.
probably peacocks.
Have you ever seen a peacock?
Yeah, yeah.
We got them
You
all
know
over.
peacocks, don't
You
you?
see something out there, Helen?
Oh, they're in the backyard.